So you have the ethnic cleansing operations, you have the settler terrorism, you have the expansion of the settlement enterprise, you have the ongoing annexation efforts that we talked about, the Bezalel Smotrich transfer. And then just a few weeks ago, the Israeli government shut the Allenby border, turning the West Bank into an open-air prison similar to what it did to Gaza. You can't leave. You can't come in. It's just closed. It's just a gigantic prison. This is life for Palestinians in the West Bank.
Yeah. It's, and I don't think that people realize that it's just been like this. It's been like this for 76 years. It's just gotten progressively worse. But now that you mention that, so that restructuring was happening in July.
That's right.
Right. So then just a few months later, how convenient for them to be able to have some sort of, manufacturing consent opportunity to justify this phase, because this is now like the final solution in Gaza.
Well, I think it's also very important to point this out. And Zach, I'm sure that you've been paying attention to what we've also been talking about, which is the Zio takeover of our media, particularly by Larry Ellison, is to rewrite history as fast as possible. But as we know, with these genocidal psychopaths, they can only keep their mouth shut for so long. And so whether you are aware of this clip or not, Jen, I know you haven't seen this because this just came out today. So here is one of the three-headed horsemen of the Zio state, Smotrich, saying exactly what's going to go down in Gaza, despite this whole ceasefire that's already been broken, of course.
אבל קיבלי התיישבות לאורך זמן אין ביטחון. אז יש לנו סבלנות, אבל יש לנו נחישות ואמונה. ואנחנו בעזרת השם נמשיך את סדרת הניצחונות ואת הניסים הגדולים. תענה בחוסה איתנו, וניצחון מלא גם פעם.
If that's your God, I don't want to know it.
We actually have a concept in Judaism called Chilul Hashem, which translates to desecration of God's name. And I can't think of a greater desecration of God's name than holding a Sefer Torah, holding the 5 books of Moses, the holiest book in the Jewish tradition, which, by the way, you're not even, if it ever touches the ground, you have to bury it.
Yeah.
That's how holy it is. Okay?
Yeah.
And he's holding that book while calling for settlement in Gaza on top of the ruins of the Palestinian people who have just faced 2 years of genocide. I mean, can you think of a greater desecration of God's name than that?
No, it makes me think of how, we talked before about Tucker Carlson doing the clip he did where he was basically speaking to fellow Christians and saying that supporting this is actually heresy. And that is what it is. This is heresy to any of the truth is any of the Judeo-Christian religions. This would be heresy because none of them call for that. But as an atheist, to me, it's all, it's all mishigas. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I see this as just another example of they're not going to be able to whitewash this as much as they think they can. There's too many eyes on all of them right now. And the fact is, there was no ceasefire. It was just a stoppage for maybe 24 hours, if you even want to call it that. Now they're saying at least 11 Palestinians have been murdered in Gaza. We know the number, again, is probably a lot higher. And one of the things that we've also noticed, Zach, as I'm sure you have as well, with rare exception, and friend of the show and fellow anti-Zionist Jew, Steve Donziger, pointed out on his feed today, the undercount in terms of how many people have been mass murdered is its own crime against humanity as far as I'm concerned. Still seeing people suggesting that 70,000 have died, maybe 100,000. No, it's at least 500,000, if not 750,000. And the fact that there is this drastic undercount, I think, is also an example of trying to whitewash the reality of how bad this is right now.
Well, the fact is that we've known since October 7th that the death toll is a dramatic undercount. It doesn't count people incinerated by the bombs. It doesn't count people buried under the rubble. It doesn't count people who have been buried in mass graves that Israel has tried to hide, such as the mass grave that was discovered of the emergency workers who were murdered while they were trying to rescue people. This was in the south of Gaza a few months ago. It doesn't include all the Palestinians who have been abducted and are lingering in Israeli torture prisons. We just got a report, was it yesterday, from the Gaza Health Ministry of some 90 bodies that were just dumped, that were returned to Israel. This was an exchange, right? So 50 in the ceasefire deal, you had for every one Palestinian for every one Israeli body that would be returned to Israel, 15 Palestinian bodies would be returned to Palestine. But where did these bodies come from? How are there just 90 bodies, most of them in handcuffs?
Did you see? I saw one of them, like the explicit photo of it, and it's just they were blindfolded and handcuffed and leg shackled, and that's how they died and tortured.
And the death toll didn't include those people, and God knows how many more bodies are lingering in Israeli. There could be thousands of bodies lingering in Israeli refrigerators right now, above and beyond the bodies that had been there for decades. So the truth is, we have no idea what the true death toll is. So you're absolutely right about that. And I think it's incumbent upon all observers to assume the worst, because Israel won't let independent observers in. It won't let human rights commissions enter Gaza. It won't let independent journalists enter Gaza. It won't let anyone, you won't allow reconstructive equipment. You can't bring heavy equipment in, so you can't find the bodies. So of course we should assume the worst until proven otherwise. I completely agree with that assessment.
Yeah. I've been saying that I don't see any way out of this short of 2.2 million dead bodies, because at the end of the day, the famine that has set in for so many of them is irreversible in terms of the damage. And that would be even if you had medical treatment and those things were in place right now, which they're not. And given the condition of Gaza, it's not going to be for a really long time. So you're talking about a place that has no sanitation, no running water, like all of that. And they're still being completely oppressed. So there's no reason to think that all of a sudden their lives are going to turn around and the water is going to start flowing.
You have a concept called excess mortality or indirect deaths. These are deaths from disease, from people's wounds that are festering and lingering. They can't get the proper treatment and care. They may get a common cold, and because they're famished, because Israel is denying entry of food into Gaza, the common cold or the common flu becomes deadly. And if you hear the doctors, we have more than 150 doctors or so who have gone into Gaza. These are American doctors, Canadian doctors, etc. And they come back and they tell you, every time I enter Gaza, I see patients die from preventable deaths. They all say that. Someone, they just couldn't get the care they needed, and then they got an infection and they died. Or you don't have the proper equipment to treat them, so they died a preventable death. And how many people are dying from preventable deaths that are not dying in hospitals, that are just dying in their tents or in their shelters or in the open air? We have no idea.
I would like to know your thoughts, as we have talked about the manipulation of the media sphere by Larry Ellison, but all the underlings that have come with it. I believe that Zionism deliberately pushes for anti-Jewish hatred in this country at a fever pitch now. And I'm watching guys in the manosphere, including one big content creator who, knock on wood, is supposed to come on the channel on Saturday night with me. And they really have gotten to a point now where they're just not hiding it anymore. They're just saying it's the Jews and that's it. And all the while I'm thinking, I'm not of the mind that these are all just outright anti-Jewish haters. I think that they have basically been pushed in this direction by the Zio state, by the Tishbis of the world, the Messings of the world, the Olivia Reingolds of the world, who are now doing everything they can to basically push Zoran in a direction that's going to derail his mayoral aspects when he takes over. And he is going to win the mayoral race in 3 weeks. And so this, to me, is, I think, a plan as far as they're concerned, because I think Zionism only survives if there is a fever pitch of anti-Jewish hatred in the United States. That's my opinion.
Just today, you had this Israeli football team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, And I guess some of the fans were barred from, I guess, going to watch the match or whatever. And the narrative that you hear now is, oh, it's anti-Semitism. Well, no, it's not anti-Semitism. You could call it anti-Israel if you want. But you have people, Jewish football fans are not allowed to come to the UK. What do you mean Jewish football? You have to be Jewish to be a supporter of an Israeli soccer league? They're intentionally conflating Jews and Israelis. You could say Israeli Jews, because I bet most of them are Israeli Jews rather than Israeli Palestinians. But just calling them Jews, what you're doing, what you're telling the world is that Jew equals Israeli. You know how many times in my life people ask me if I'm Israeli? I've never once in any public statement, any public article I've ever published, any public utterance ever claimed I'm Israeli. Once in my, never in my entire life. Why do people think I'm Israeli? Because Israelis want you to conflate Israeli and Jewish. So does Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, who constantly says the Jewish people and the Jewish state in tandem. You'll always hear him repeat this. There's so much hatred against Israel and the Jewish people and the Jewish state. He just bundles them together as if they're the same thing. Well, let me ask you this. If the Jewish people and the Jewish state are the same thing, does that mean me as a Jew in the United States, I bear personal responsibility that I should be held accountable for Israel's actions? That's deeply anti-Semitic. And it's Israel supporters that are doing that. The chief rabbi of the United Kingdom once said, Zionism leaps off every page of the Siddur. Wait, what? So then I should go to a Siddur and write Free Palestine on it. That's what you're telling me, that I should take a Jewish object, a prayer book that was invented 1,500 years ago, that was invented a millennium before Zionism existed. You're telling me that I should go and put Free Palestine on there because that is a Zionist doctrine, the Jewish prayer book? And then when you go to a synagogue and you see the Israeli flag inside the synagogue, and then you go to services on Saturday morning and they sing a prayer for the state of Israel on Saturday morning, and then they sing a prayer wishing safety on the soldiers, on the IDF, as they're committing a genocide, I should go and protest in front of the synagogue. Then I'll be accused of being an anti-Semite, but they're singing a prayer wishing safety on an army carrying out a genocide. So it's not a synagogue, it's a political institution that has a political platform that I want to protest. And so I'm not anti-Semitic. They're instigating and inciting anti-Semitism. It's a big difference.